Before we get into what the Senate actually passed, I want to talk about the context and why this matters. I think it's really important to understand the context of this fight about taxes and who pays and who doesn't and what do we do with the money. So let's start with a very basic graph, okay? And this is how much money does each income group take home in this country? Well, in 1970, the top 1% of Americans, the richest 1% of Americans, took home a little less than 10% of all the income, and the bottom 50% of Americans took home about 20% of all the income. But over the last 35 years, those numbers have changed totally. They have flipped entirely. And now, the top 1% takes home over 20% of all the income, and the bottom 50%, half of all Americans take home only 10% of all the income. That is important context for what we are talking about when we say who pays taxes and what does that money go to. Here's another way to think about this. In 1984, the median household, so this is, if you lined up every single American family from the poorest to the richest, this is the household right smack dab in the middle, right? Half of the Americans are below, half of Americans are above. The median household income, just under $50,000. This circle is going to be to scale. There's going to be a couple other circles on here, and this is to scale, okay? So now here's the average income for the top 1% in 1984. Bigger, obviously. Richer people are richer than people in the middle. We know that. But what's happened since 1984 to 2014? Now here's the median income. It's gone up a little bit. The circle doesn't seem that much bigger because it's not that much bigger. And this is accounting for inflation. Let me be clear. This is accounting for inflation. But now let's take a look at the top 1%. Yeah. Yeah, that's the appropriate reaction. Every time I show this graph, I usually get people going, ooh, or wow. You know that the rich have gotten richer, but this is like crazy, right? This is not an acceptable trajectory for our economy.